Well, good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and kick this off. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Pagent,
Is that Pagent? He's here.
Halliburton,
Here.
Haney Keith,
Here.
Nash,
Here.
Stead,
Here.
Willits. Willits,
She's here, but online.
all present.
All right. I'm just gonna say a couple things to kick this off. Stephen, welcome. We've got Bree that I think that'll follow Stephen. Today, because it's the end of the fiscal year, we've asked folks that are involved in some of the highest priority strategic projects and issue areas to come present where we've been, what we've accomplished this year, and you know that helps us tee up what's going to happen in the next fiscal year, which starts next week. A lot's been done. It's great to have you back to talk about the bus system and the some of the good news that you'll share with us. But we wanted to talk about, of course, VRT, traffic safety, have an update on housing because of the high focus there, and then public safety, a return after hearing from both chiefs on their capital plans long-term, a return to kind of update us on where we're at today as we head into the next fiscal year, especially when it comes to the new hiring that'll happen with fire and additional positions with police. So with that, I'm just going to have Stephen take it over to go through VRT's routes.
Madam Mayor, council members, my name is Courtney Washburn.
Oh, sorry, Courtney.
And I'm the Chief of Staff for the City of Boise. And Bree Brush unexpectedly is unable to make it this morning. So I ask for your kindness as I work my way through her slides. If you have questions associated with a transportation update, I'm happy to capture those in return. But we felt it was important to bring to you some updates on some key initiatives in the transportation efforts that the city is undertaking. And then at that time, I'll hand it over to VRT to talk about some route enhancements and some proposed opportunities for the city. So with that, I'm hoping a transportation slide appears on these screens. There we go. So again, I'm not Bree Brush. I'm sure she's bummed that she's not here this morning to give this presentation. But again, I'd be happy to capture any questions or follow-up you may have. Just as a reminder, our transportation work currently has 4 priority areas. Those are active transportation, regional partnerships, traffic safety, and investing in public transit. And I'm the controller of these slides, so bear with me. So here are our priority areas. It should be familiar to all of you that this is called Movement for Everyone throughout the city. And I'm going to provide some updates in each of these areas. So on active transportation, as you all are aware, a few months ago, you approved a contract with Lime, at which time the city consolidated our micro mobility efforts under a sole provider. We did this to increase access to e-scooters and e-bikes across the city, rather than have them all concentrated in the downtown area. We believe working with Lime as a sole provider will create a program that works best for our residents. And so far, ridership is strong. And in the coming months, Bree will be able to present you with data associated with that decision. Under the leadership of Council President Halliburton, the city is beginning a process of the recertification as a bicycle-friendly community. This is a certification awarded by the League of American Cyclists to communities that demonstrate a commitment to promoting bicycling and advocating for safe cycling infrastructure. Council President, I didn't know if you wanted to add any comments to this item.
Maybe just a little bit of background. The city currently is a silver-friendly bicycle-friendly community. So is Ada County. These are things we applied for 5 or 6 years ago. I think technically they're expired now. We do have some signs around the city that says they're bicycle-friendly designation. But the goal with this is that you fill out an application and it weighs all the different types of things that you do, from education to infrastructure to enforcement, to evaluation and planning, a lot of different areas that they call the 5 Es. And trying to figure out the things that you're doing really, really well, and also the things that you can grow and do better. And so it's a great sort of third party opportunity for us to really go through everything that we're doing related to bicycling and walking friendly communities, from development to law enforcement, to whatever it may be, and see where we rank, but then also see where there's opportunities to grow and get some recommendations back. So I think it's a good process for us to evaluate and to work with ACHD and other stakeholders to do that.
The next item is ACHD's policy reviews. The city of Boise continues to build on our partnership to support efforts by ACHD to support active transportation goals. This comprehensive review includes policies related to speed management, pathway development, access management, among others. And then the city is focused on regional partnerships. The background of this photo may look familiar to some of you. This is the historic Boise train depot, which is indicative of the work the city is doing to restore passenger rail service to the area. The city applied for and will likely hear about a corridor identification grant. We expect to hear about that in November. Until then, we continue to meet with our peers in Salt Lakes and partners up and down the corridor to strengthen these partnerships, as well as position ourselves for the return of rail service. In addition to that, the city continues to work with Compass and ACHD to discuss policies specifically around the improvement of safety efforts. And I'll get into that a bit more in a further slide. So when it comes to traffic safety, and I think Bree has touched on this in the past, we are working with Compass, including Ada and Canyon County and the cities within, to come up with a safe streets for all action plan. This is critically important for the city to realize its vision associated with the Vision Zero Task Force. And what we're trying hard to work on as a result of these collaborations is the creation of a regional safety action plan. And the consultant to do this work has been selected. And once the plan is fully developed, city staff will return to you. In between those, we'll probably seek your input as the creation of that plan moves forward to ensure it meets your expectations. We're also continuing to work with Compass to continue infrastructure improvements. I believe this has been discussed before. My memory says that Councilmember Nash frequents this challenging location in the city, which is the Emerald Bridge. We are working closely with our partners to apply to replace the Emerald Bridge through a new program established through ITD to support local highway jurisdiction projects.
Madam Mayor, Courtney, do you have any dates for the Compass and the Safe Streets for All action plan?
Councilmember Halliburton, I think we have determined some interim steps we could do to try to reduce the timeline it will take to get us a safety action plan. I just don't recall those off the top of my head, but Bree can return with those.
Sounds great.
Madam Mayor, I also have a question for Courtney.
Sure, go ahead.
Courtney, thank you so much for this update. I had a question in regards to rail safety because the Biden administration announced it's like over $1 billion yesterday. Are we included in that at all for the efforts to bring back rail service?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, I do not believe that we are currently in that bucket of potential funding, but I believe the mayor would like to add some comments to that.
Great.
Yeah, Courtney's right there. It's my understanding, I wish Kathy was here, but it's my understanding that those are funds that we could potentially qualify for if we put grants in once we've taken. So, but it's a stepped process. So first, with this application that we have in now, if they say yes to the return to rail Boise to Salt Lake, then we would start with those dollars. I'm working through the study with ITD on what updates need to be done. And then there'd be more information on what we could apply for kind of corridor safety, rail safety, crossings, updates, et cetera.
Yeah, makes sense. So in other words, it's a stepped process and we're not quite to that step yet.
Right. If we were, it'll be one of the many things that we look at, but it's, as far as I understand it, it's grants we'd apply for rail safety and updates.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to move on to a new task force that is going to be announced by the city and ACHD. I believe we'll have more information on who will serve on this task force and when these meetings will occur tomorrow. But for the time being, we are creating a traffic fatality review task force under the leadership of the mayor and the council president. And this is really to take a deeper dive, both within our police department and associated staff to look at improvements that can be made regarding fatal crashes that are occurring to ensure that we're making every effort we can in light of any findings to make the city a safer place. And with that, I'm going to see if Council President Halliburton would like to add more to this item.
Madam Mayor, Courtney, thank you. Yeah, a couple of things here. I think that one, just sort of acknowledging, why we're here. We've had a really heartbreaking year when it comes to pedestrian and bicycle related fatalities, not only in the city of Boise, all across Ada County and really all across the Treasure Valley. And we want to make sure that we're both responding to these in a way to fix problems, but we're also doing whatever we can to be proactive about preventing crashes like this from happening again in the future. A couple of years ago, the city of Boise passed a Vision Zero resolution, which is great. And one of the tricky things that we all know with the city is that since we partner with Ada County, but it's not the same agency, we sometimes have a difficult time trying to figure out how do we review things holistically when it comes to our streets. And so the idea here would be that we would have a joint task force with ACHD, the city of Boise, potentially our law enforcement. So when there is a crash or a severe injury, that we're looking at those together and we're looking at those comprehensively and pulling in any other outside groups or stakeholders that may need to be involved as well. If it happened next to a bus stop, perhaps that's Valley Regional Transit. If it happened on ITD, potentially somebody coming in from ITD, but really a mechanism and a system where whenever there was something that occurred, we would ensure that we would be reviewing it to see what are some immediate steps that we might be able to take to increase the safety in this area. What are some long-term steps or policy related decisions that might have an impact? And I think just as importantly, what similar characteristics does this intersection have with intersections all across the city? And that's where you really get to the safe systems and the Vision Zero, because you're not just responding to one particular area, you're responding to one area and then exploring other areas that have those similar characteristics across the entire city and trying to identify policies and infrastructure changes that actually might make a difference in that more proactive way. And also ensuring that every single time that there is a crash or a serious injury, that we're evaluating it through the same lens. And making sure that we're doing that equitably, no matter what part of the city it happens. Certainly when we lose kids that are in a community, it's tragic, but any loss of life is tragic. And we want to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to respond in an appropriate way. One thing I'll just say is that I want to give the Ada County Highway Department a lot of credit for the way that they responded for one of our most recent ones when Jaden was hit and killed on 16th Street. Immediately going out, making some changes and talking about long-term changes across the 16th Street corridor, where we've had some other crashes as well. And so we know that when we respond well, that it makes a difference. And if we can do it in a more systematic way, and if we can do it in a way that actually tackles other areas in the city, then we can be proactive about it at the same time. And so that's sort of the idea here. And I think that we're going to try to be meeting within the next couple of weeks to actually map this out a little bit more. Until we get it into more of a permanent space going forward.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to echo the council president. It's really been eye-opening when you look at the data and then just how this has affected families, and it's in all parts of the city. And I think it makes a lot of sense to work with our county partners in what we can do. And I know that Mayor, you've taken a lead on that. The council president has taken a lead on that. And I think to the council president's point, whatever we can do to evaluate quickly and make steps quickly is really imperative for our citizens. So I'd like to just thank you both for your leadership on this issue, and ACHD.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, the last item I have is to highlight the investment in public transit. And then I think I'm going to hand it over to Valley Regional Transit to go through these items. I appreciate the opportunity to phone a friend in this conversation, and I have captured the follow-ups, and I will ensure that information gets to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Stephen Hunt. I'm the Chief Development Officer of Valley Regional Transit, and I've got Kate Dahl with me as well. She's our Principal Planner at VRT. And we prepared a slide today, or a slideshow today, to go over the final service concepts or proposal that will be in front of the VRT board on Monday. So the details of this just came out in the board packet yesterday. And we're excited to bring this information to you all today and hopefully have a bit of a conversation about the will of the council related to the recommended changes to the final proposal that the VRT board will be considering on Monday. So I'm going to have to go through this real quickly, but we're just going to go over the highlights of the changes, how they compare to the existing network, what some of the recommended changes are that will address the concerns that we heard from the public as we went out to the public with this final concept, and then have some discussion. So to begin with, the benefits of this network, as you know, this has been something that we've been doing for just over a year, looking at how we could restructure the network to get more use out of it and better support our communities. And with this restructure, we'll be able to increase frequency on a number of main corridors. We'll be able to better support the zoning update within the city of Boise with quality transit service along those main corridors. We're expanding Saturday service. We're introducing a couple of crosstown connections, which help just expand the accessibility across the city, make transit easier to use for trips besides those that are headed just to downtown. You know, there's lots of different nodes across the city, and we're trying to better connect those. And if we look at the number of people that have access to frequent service or service of higher frequencies, we're able to double the number of people that have access to 30-minute service, and about a 34% increase in the number of people that have access to 15-minute service. Altogether, even though there are some negative impacts on certain communities, we're expecting the overall ridership to grow by 20% with these investments.
I just want to say, if you go back to that, you know, when we first started out this conversation, it was more a conversation on cutting routes. And so really looking forward to what you came up with, because these outcomes are so different than what you were proposing at the beginning, and want to acknowledge the number of people that will be within that quarter mile. And that's the 5-minute walk, which is kind of the proven, that's what people walk to. That's what people, if you're within a 5-minute walk, you'll walk to something and you'll use transit. So to double the number of people in a half hour and a 30% increase to the 15-minute increments is really impressive. So I look forward to seeing it, but wanted to acknowledge that how different that is from the conversation we were having however many months ago.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And truly, this is a conversation we've had with the whole community in Ada and Canyon County, and we came to these results because of the continued coordination with our funding partners. Wanted to highlight, especially in this audience, the connection between this restructure and the modern zoning code, and the way that by focusing transit on main corridors, we're able to help advance concepts within that zoning code update, including efforts to reduce parking requirements and facilitate additional development, whether those be accessory dwelling units or just higher density developments, and even redevelopment along main corridors. And so when we talk about increasing the number of people that have access to 15-minute service, that's the same, those are the same corridors that were identified in the zoning code update for TOD, as well as some of the other mixed use development or mixed use corridors where we were adding the 30-minute service. Then wanted to highlight the ways that we have been responsive to the public comment throughout. So we came out with some concepts in the spring. We had 400 comments from there. We revised that initial concept into the final, which we released in August. And then what we're highlighting here are the changes that we made from that August proposal to what we're having the board consider now. And just wanted to highlight the ways that we responded to those public comments by maintaining service out to Harris Ranch, by connecting it to the Warm Springs corridor. We increased transit services, transit access. So there, as the mayor mentioned, the original concepts actually had a reduction in the total number of people that were within the access to any transit. That's still true, but we've cut that down by 2/3. We've reduced the number of people that would be losing service. And recall, what we're talking about here is concentrating the network. We have a broader network right now, and we're concentrating on fewer corridors, and we've been able to mitigate the impacts of those of that concentration by some of the recommendations that will be before the board on Monday. We've extended service out to mitigate some of the loss on the Route 10, and we also were able to change how we're doing the lift, expand the lift transit connections so that we again mitigate the impact of areas that are losing direct transit service. We do want to note, though, that there are still impacts to the two existing riders. We've tried to mitigate those as much as possible, but you'll see where we expect to still see some of that loss in terms of fixed route service and the plans that we have to mitigate those impacts. So just really quickly, the summary of all the changes. On the top line here, you can see the number of routes that are either improved or new. Beyond access services, one of the things that we're doing to help mitigate the impacts to persons with disability on the changes that are coming both in Ada and Canyon County. The Route 20 that's on here is that's the new crosstown connection along with the 21. We've adjusted a lot of the services it's a little bit like pick up sticks. When you pull in one area, things shift around. And so there's a lot of changes that happened in order to minimize the impact to the riding public. So going on, when we look at the outcome then of all of these changes, what I wanted to highlight here is just the difference between the proposal that we made in August and what the board is considering now. And these changes are a result of the recommendations that the board will be considering on Monday. Again, we're able to increase the ridership in the system from an estimated 16% growth to 20% growth, reduce the impact on population served, the number of people that have direct access to service. We cut that loss by 2/3 from a 9% reduction to a 3% reduction. We're able to maintain or actually increase the number of jobs that are served, and all while maintaining the number of people that have access to the 15 and 30-minute service.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead. Stephen, could you go back to that slide? Go ahead, Luke.
hey, Stephen, can you walk us through what the service impacts would be in West Boise and the mitigation strategies for that?
Yeah, I will be able to do that. We have a couple of slides here that get into that route level detail, and I'll take that there if I may. So just to compare the two different networks. So Councilmember Willits, you were just asking about the network in West Boise. This is the existing network, and you'll see that the service out in West Boise is focused around that bluish line is the Route 8 local and the 8X that goes up 5 mile. You can also see the Chinden corridor. And I mean, again, I'm focusing on West Boise because of the comment that was just made, also the 12, which goes up and down north-south on Maple Grove. But this is the footprint of the existing network. When we look at the revised network, you'll see that we are making changes throughout the system. There's changes in the central bench where we have a loss of service. There's also some changes in West Boise where we're seeing some loss of service. And I'll just highlight those at this screen for a moment. But you'll see where there used to be a north-south kind of blue line that is reoriented to be an east-west connection between the Village and Meridian and Town Square Mall along Ustick. That still touches the higher ridership nodes along the old 8 on 5 Mile. It crosses 5 Mile at Ustick. We'll continue to have service also on Fairview during the peak hour, which is actually we'll be adding service to that peak hour service. So that will help West Boise. And the service that we're doing out to Chinden becomes two-way, so that's easier to travel between downtown Boise and the HP campus up on Chinden. The areas, you'll see at the end of the presentation, the areas in between Ustick and Chinden are covered by the new transit connections. So these are some of the mitigation factors that we have for those neighborhoods that are losing direct service. They'll be able to use Lyft to get to transit. We also are continuing to explore opportunities with Tessa and the rollout of the Lime program to see if we can't use Lime and bike share as a first and last mile connection, because sometimes there are other barriers of using Lyft, people's familiarity with it or comfort level using that versus their own kind of vehicle with a shared vehicle in Lime. So that's another thing that we're continuing to explore. If we can't find places to place those shared vehicles along communities that will remain outside of the direct fixed route service.
Thank you.
But I wanted to spend a minute going over the specific recommendations that we made between the August proposal and this final that the board will consider. There are 5 main recommendations that are of note here. The changes that we made to the 4 and the 6 ended up leaving some fairly large holes on the central bench area, which we would be covering by, rather than eliminating the Route 4, restructuring it to travel between downtown and Town Square Mall, covering actually Franklin Rose Hill area as well as the Bora neighborhood. And this opens up a couple new connections that currently aren't in the network, while still maintaining service to some of the communities that otherwise would lose service. I mentioned already the service out to Harris Ranch that is maintained by extending the Route 17 out Warm Springs to Barber Valley, Harris Ranch, and then coming in on Park Center. This is a one-way loop, so it is a little bit different than the kind of service that's out there today, but it does maintain a footprint in those neighborhoods. And especially as the Harris Ranch community continues to grow, we felt like this was a really important connection to maintain. We also heard.
I've just got a question about that one. So is that throughout the day, or is that just rush hour time?
So that 17 Warm Springs out to Harris Ranch would be all day. Yes.
And right now, Harris Ranch is just served at rush hour times?
Well,
correct?
right now, Harris
Any
Ranch
times?
has higher, Madam Mayor and members of the council, right now, Harris Ranch is served throughout the day. It has more service in the peak period than it does. It has 30-minute service in the peak, 60-minute service in the off peak. So this is
Gotcha.
still a reduction in the overall service to the community, but it maintains,
But it keeps it going out there,
Yes.
especially with all those homes opening. Okay, great, thanks.
yes. We also heard a fair bit about the changes to the 10, and which we are still proposing that it go to be peak only. But one of the changes we made with the change to the 17 would be extending the 16 out, essentially the Route 10 pattern up to Hill Road and Harrison, which means there will be all day service to that part of the 10, which was a little bit awkward to use the other alternatives that remain, which we can talk about for the other communities along the Route 10. So there will be all day service between Hill and Harrison and downtown. Actually, this opens up a stop that used to be served by the Route 14 at Park Hill, where there's some apartments there by Harrison Hollow, which would now have service. And so this is connected to the VA service. And then the other change that we are proposing is to the Route 7. This has to do with ensuring that we were able to continue to be running on time while making the connection to the new Orchard route at Fairview and Orchard. So the Route 7, rather than going in and out on Milwaukee, would come in on Milwaukee, serve Town Square Mall, and then go out on Cole Road. It also helps with some of the transferring activity at Town Square Mall, which is more important with this network redesign. So I'm going to keep moving quickly through these so you can see how these play out. This is the route, what was proposed again in August with the removal of the Route 1 out to Harris Ranch. You can see the nodes where there were ridership concentrations. With the change that we're proposing, we pick up essentially all of those nodes with some level of service. Imagine this is a clockwise loop, so people riding in on Park Center would have an easy trip into town. It also changes the connection between Park Center and downtown, serving the St. Luke's and downtown directly rather than going through Boise State, but they can still make that Boise State connection using the Bronco shuttle services from Main Street Station. This was some of the comments that we heard from the public about wanting more direct service between the professionals along Park Center and in Barber Valley and the downtown core. So this is the central bench. You can see the areas, the red dashes of areas that were losing service with the removal of the Route 4 and the restructure of the Route 6, which becomes the 20 on Orchard. So there are some pretty significant nodes of nodes of activity that would be losing service without this adjustment. And we're adding this, instead of eliminating the Route 4, we would just be restructuring the Route 4 to, instead of going up to the airport, turning continuing rather on Rose Hill to Franklin, and then serve the Bora neighborhood and over to Town Square Mall. This would be an all-day service, maintains all-day access to Bora High School. It also would serve Bishop Kelly, and by connecting at Town Square Mall, there would be lots more opportunities for students to transfer to that route to get to Bora High School. And then this is the last one, the Route 7, which today goes in and out on Milwaukee, would be revised to go in on Milwaukee and then out on Cole. You'll notice the Route 12, which covers the current part of the 7A, which continued to downtown. I'm just bringing this up to say there are other changes, other reasons why shortening the inbound trip on the 7 to use Cole, making it fast to get downtown, makes the connections that we're making to Town Square Mall all the better. And then the VA loop, you'll see what was proposed to cut the service on 9th out to Brumbach, which we just were not seeing a lot of good use on that. It resulted in a very short route. By extending that out to cover the part of 15th and the 10, which only runs during the peak period, you're able to maintain all-day service in that neighborhood, as well as bring in, again, the Park Hill community. Really quick, what we use to evaluate the sum of all these changes is whether or not we're able to get more people, more places, more often. And so this Jane allows us to do that. Just want to point to the percentage of increase in locations you can access in 15, 30, 45, and 60 minutes. You can see that in the table on the top right. All of those are increasing. On the map, you can see where those areas are increasing. This is from downtown at Main Street Station at 5. And then this is from the airport also at 5:30 in the evening. Both of those areas having more access with these changes. And then to wrap up the changes that we made, we also adjusted the specialized services to mitigate some of those impacts. I'll touch on those very briefly. Lyft late night, we were able to extend to cover more parts of Meridian. You'll see that it covers Boise. This is a income qualified service, so low-income individuals will be able to use service late at night when the fixed route service isn't operating to access their jobs. We opened that up to a few more locations in Meridian. The biggest one, though, that supports the changes to the fixed route network is the expansion of the Lyft Transit Connections service area. So this would cover that West Boise area that is losing direct service on 5 Mile. It also extends out Park Center and south to all the way out to Locust Grove to the south, and Lake Hazel to the south, and then covering Hill Road that wouldn't have midday service, but you'd still be able to use the transit connections to get down to either State Street or out to the park to 15th and Harrison, or to Gary and Bunch. Lastly, in terms of the alternative services, I wanted to point out that access service is a requirement that we provide to individuals with disability anywhere that there's fixed route service. The original proposal would have removed that access service again in the Barber Valley neighborhood. By restoring service out there all day, we'll continue to have fixed route or access service to that community. Where there are impacts to access, where there are those red shaded areas, people will be able to use the Beyond Access service, which is open to persons with disability and available to across Ada and Canyon County. And if they can't get on access, they can apply to use the Beyond Access service. We are taking action on Monday. We're expecting the board to take action on these proposals. And then we plan on implementing these changes in whatever is approved in the summer of 2024. There'll be a lot of activity over the spring to do signage and public outreach to ensure that everybody is familiar with the changes because they are significant. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thanks, Stephen. All right. I think we're good. Really appreciate the changes that were made in response to our concerns as well as the public's concerns. And some of us will be there Monday to pick this up and to approve it. But you made a lot of progress
Thank you
since
very
we
much.
last spoke, and I appreciate that. All right, we're going to move into housing. We'll move right along. We've got Nikki and Maureen with us today. See you both Monday. Thanks so much for coming out. Welcome.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, members of council. Great to be with you today. While we get the slides up, I'll just kick us off with a little bit of framing. I think what Maureen and I both hope that you'll come away with today is a sense of the impact on Boise families and households that the work that the city is under your direction is doing related to housing is having. I think we talk a lot about units and numbers of homes, but really thinking about the individual people and families that will be directly impacted by this work in really profound ways is what we're hoping to communicate, while we also talk a lot about units and number of homes. So the city's investment in this area really is crucial to the scale of affordably priced homes that are coming online right now and will be in future years, particularly those that are priced for households that are making at or below 60% of the area median income. So I will wait a second to see if the slides. Okay. Oh, there we go. So you've all likely seen this graph before. It's from the 2021 housing needs analysis. And that analysis looked at the number of additional homes needed each year by income in Boise. And as you'll see, the bulk of that need is at and below for households that are at and below 60% AMI in terms of their household income. And that really is where the city's investment has been focused, given that we know that that's not an area where the market is likely to be providing supply. Prior to the city's investment of both local funds and federal ARPA funds in affordable housing, we could expect to invest our federal pass-through dollars in about a project every other year. So that's maybe 100 units coming online with city investment every other year. And since Mayor and Council decided, based on the depth of need in our community, to allocate more funds for this purpose, we have been able to build a much more robust affordable housing pipeline. And we anticipate that that funding will help to bring over 1,200 affordable homes online by 2026, which includes nearly 200 of the 250 units of supportive housing that an analysis showed was needed to address homelessness in Boise. So without that commitment from Mayor and Council, we could have expected to see the city's investment contribute to something closer to 350 affordable homes in that same period of time. So a very significant increase in terms of the number of Boise families impacted by the increased availability of affordable homes. So Maureen will be sharing a little bit more with you about the phases that each of those over 1,200 affordable homes is in, as well as some broader investments that have been made.
Thank you. Nice to be here with you today, Maureen Brewer. I'm the Senior Manager of our Division of Housing and Community Development. Can I have the clicker? Thank you. Let's see. Okay, so before I jump into the pipeline of affordable housing projects that Nikki mentioned that we are in the process of constructing, excuse me, or going through entitlement, permitting, et cetera, I just wanted to touch on a couple of high level items that have kept us pretty busy in this last fiscal year to advance our housing goals. So the first one, as council is probably likely already aware, we closed out the rental assistance portion of the emergency rental assistance program in late June, early July. That program had been active since February 2021. It served almost 10,000 households, and we distributed $43 million in rental assistance in partnership with the Housing Authority. We have
And-
also recently,
That was, how many homes, how many families did you say?
nearly 10,000, Mayor.
And that was just Boise City?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thanks.
We also were recently before you with that set of agreements that will demonstrably move forward our efforts to redevelop Capitol Campus. And then in the last year, we have also conditionally awarded 10.5 million in state and local fiscal recovery funds. This is a fund source that's tucked in under ARPA, and another 6.7 in emergency rental assistance 2 funds. So there was ERA 1 and ERA 2, and we were able to set aside 25% of our ERA 2 funds to invest in affordable housing. And then we've had some exciting progress on housing projects. Really just recently, this is starting to kind of come together. Several of you joined us at the State and Arthur groundbreaking a couple of weeks ago. We're prepared to break ground on Denton. I'll talk more about that project in a few minutes, as early as next week. And then we also completed the purchase of the Park Apartments from Boise State University, and then land on McKinney and El Dorado Streets. That's over in the Fairview and Cole area. So this is what the pipeline looks like currently. These are those over 1,200 homes that Nikki mentioned in her intro, that these are over 1,200 units that the city is actively making investments in. I will share with you a little bit of detail about each of these projects that you see outlined here in terms of those that are preparing to lease up, the over 300 units that we have under construction, property that we've acquired, and we anticipate being able to build something close to 250 homes, and then a handful of projects that are in significant pre-development phases. So we have 3 projects that are nearing completion, making up over 200 affordable homes. Celebration Acres, located near Fairview and 5 Mile, is preparing to start leasing. The city made an investment with its federal home dollars in this project. And then I know several of you have been able to see the Franklin. They will be prepared to start leasing sort of in a phased occupancy methodology, if you will. They'll have a phased certificate of occupancy in the next couple of weeks. This is a Boise City Housing Land Trust site located over at Franklin and Orchard. And then we have a smaller investment in 7 homes at 27th Street Station. They received some financial incentive for the city as part of a pilot program that we were running. Then we currently have, or will have, as soon as next week, over 300 affordable homes under construction. Again, State and Arthur is a Boise City Housing Land Trust site. We expect that it will be complete by spring of 2025. Denton will be roughly on the same timeline as State and Arthur. This is almost 200 units over by St. Alphonsus. And then we're also contributing to 2 home ownership projects. One's the Workland subdivision and one is Coal Bluff. those are in varying stages of completeness and are qualifying home buyers currently. We acquired 2 properties this year. One is the University Park Apartments. That purchase was finalized on September 20th. Again, we're leasing that property back to Boise State for their current academic year. And then next year anticipate being able to move in families exiting homelessness. And then we also purchased a site just a half block really off of Fairview, like I said, near Cole. We think we'll get about 200 affordable homes there. We completed the purchase in May. We're currently working with Ada County to partner on the gap financing. I expect that subgrant agreement will be before you in the next couple of weeks. And then if we stay on track with the financing side on McKinney, this project will be one of the first that submits for entitlement under the new zoning code on December 1st.
I want to highlight that one because you'll remember we had the joint meeting with Ada County and we all committed to finding a way we could get to yes together. And this is, I really appreciate the commission and their team working with our team and the council on getting to yes on this because of the impact it'll have on so many people.
So then we have 3 different projects in kind of a varying stages of pre-development. New Path 2.0 is already entitled. They are actively assembling financing and have a low-income housing tax credit application submitted to Idaho Housing and Finance Association. We have committed a portion of our state and local fiscal recovery funds to this project. They have also received project-based vouchers from the Housing Authority. So the formula, the ingredients needed as far as financing is concerned is coming together on New Path, and then they'll be well positioned, assuming that financing does come together to move forward quickly since they're already entitled. The Fulton, this is the site adjacent to the new Fire Station 5. So we have an executed project addendum with one of our preferred housing developers, Northwest Real Estate Capital Corp. This is currently in design. We're in a little bit of a holding pattern in terms of the financing because there's another funding source at Idaho Housing and Finance Association that we're anticipating will be made available soon. And that is the most viable financing path forward for the Fulton. Both New Path 2.0 and the Fulton will serve some of our most vulnerable residents exiting homelessness. And then again, spoken recently with you about Capitol Campus over on Lusk Street. We are kicking off community engagement and outreach. We are working through preliminary design, really going through the programming about what the site can support, given its size, given financial feasibility, et cetera. And then my team is also responding to a federal grant opportunity that we should be highly competitive for, given our efforts, especially related to the zoning code that we will submit for in October.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
while Maureen's taking a little breath, Maureen, talk to us about entitlement. You keep using that phrase. Can you give us some background on what that means? When something's entitled?
Madam Mayor, council member. Yeah, so what that means, and that's going to change come December 1st, sort of what the process looks like. But entitlement means, do I have the rights I need to have from the city to build what I want to build here? So the new zoning code is going to enable a different kind of entitlement, a different by right. You are allowed to do X, Y, and Z, but
Okay.
all of that is defined in the current code and then further defined, of course, in the new code.
Thank you.
Okay, so last slide from me before I turn it back over to Nikki. I just wanted to highlight one of the reasons that we came to this administration and council a couple of years ago to say, hey, here's the need in the city of Boise for deep levels of affordable housing was because we weren't seeing the private market create that level of affordability. And so in addition to some of the financial investments we're making in the projects I just referred to or briefly described, we've also started tracking whether other affordable homes are coming online and why they're coming online. So the good news is that there's 285 homes and other affordable housing projects that have varying levels of income restricted housing included in them. 7 of these 12 projects are receiving city project management. And I want to be clear that city project management alone doesn't buy affordability, but it is a service that we offer to streamline the process. And since we devoted a single project manager within the last year to this effort, we're really seeing some gains in terms of efficiency and the expediency through which they move through the entitlement and the permitting process. So that's been really excellent. And then just wanted to share kind of why this set of projects has affordability included. 5 of them have a development agreement that requires it in some way, shape, or form. 4 have you. 1, interestingly, is a low-income housing tax credit project that didn't require gap financing. So we're keeping an eye on that because that's an anomaly. Make sure that's entitled, make sure it actually gets built. So we'll track that. And then 1 is receiving workforce housing funds, and that is from the state housing trust fund when the state made the move to put some of the state and local fiscal recovery funds into the housing trust fund.
Was that the project up near Liberty that we saw? I can't remember.
Madam Mayor, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay, that's
It's
fine.
escaping me. I'm meeting with him later today, so I'm going to need to get those details straight before then, but I'll follow up for sure.
Great, thanks.
Madam Mayor, question on the housing board bonus ordinance. Do we know what aspect of the housing bonus ordinance they used? Was it parking? Was it height? Do we know if there was one aspect that's driving more?
Sure, Madam Mayor, Council President Halliburton, we do have that tracked. I don't have it front of mind for you, but I can follow up.
Madam Mayor, I have a question. So on the first page, on the first slide, you have a breakout of the AMI required, that like the needs based on AMI. So how does that relate to the affordable housing breakout and units coming on the market? Are they skewed towards what, like 80%
Yeah.
or 60%?
Madam Mayor, excuse me, Council Member Steed, by and large, the 1,200 plus homes that are coming online will serve households earning 60% of the area median income or below. We do have some 80% AMI sprinkled in there, especially the home ownership opportunities. And for example, Denton, the project that's bringing 200 units online, they really have a nice range. They go as deep as 30% AMI up to 80%, but really a deep focus on 60%.
Okay, and with the last few minutes, we wanted to just highlight a few of the additional housing efforts that the city's been taking in addition to the units that are the homes that are being brought online. I won't belabor any of them because I think you all are probably pretty familiar, but just wanted to really highlight some of the additional work that's been done. So the passage of the modern zoning code this year allows more homes to be built where it makes sense, loosens restrictions on ADUs, provides incentives for affordability that really works to expand the incentives that were part of the housing bonus ordinance, that were part of the motivation for creating that, and to expand it to be more broadly applicable in our zoning code. Also, Maureen mentioned our work to fast track affordable housing. We have received really good feedback from our affordable housing developers on the project management that our affordable housing project manager is able to provide. And the way that he described his job to me that I really liked, he said, "I'm here to foresee issues before they occur so that we can get them resolved more quickly and get the project done faster." So really being there to do early assistance meetings and also to pull together a sort of cross-sectional team of folks from fire, public works, design review to really wrap their arms around a project and work together to move it forward so that the applicant isn't kind of ping ponging between different folks. So that's been really impactful. As you know, we've been working through an ADU and movable tiny home pilot. Just an update on that. Those ideas came out of a really lengthy community process that was headed up by our innovation and performance team. And these were ideas that the community was really excited about piloting. And so we've partnered with Leap Housing on both pilots. The update is that on the tiny home side, we have one participant whose tiny home has gone through the permitting process. They're doing the site work now and expect to have that home on site in the next few months. And there's also a tiny home community that's being planned, 3 different tiny homes on a vacant parcel of land that is getting ready to go through the permitting process and working through a list of additional possible participants as well. On the ADU side, they're still working through interested candidates and vetting them to find the right participants for the program. The biggest barrier we're seeing right now, of course, is the construction market, with interest rates and construction costs being what they are. It's very challenging to make an ADU pencil if you're planning to rent it at affordable rates, especially a larger ADU, which is now permitted under the zoning code. So that's something that we'll be continuing to watch. Another project that our innovation and performance team has led out on is the creation of a public-facing housing data portal. The idea here really being that housing is a topic that many people in our community really care about and want to understand more about. So wanting to really provide access, transparent access to the data that the city has related to housing so that we're all working off of kind of a shared understanding. And also we receive lots of requests for this data from members of the public. So really wanting to have an improved customer service user experience, that maybe you shouldn't have to put in a whole request for the data. Maybe it should just exist somewhere that anyone who's looking for it can see it. So that's the idea. And that team really worked to design the website around the needs of members of the public. So did focus groups, outreach, shared a lot of drafts with stakeholder groups, and really designed that website around things that those stakeholder groups said they wanted to see. And there's an intention there to add to it over time as there's more relevant data. And we expect data related to the modern zoning code will be published there as well when it's available. These last 2 are very recent. So fee deferrals and exemptions were just before you earlier this month. And what we're working to do there is to reduce the barrier that the city's own development related fees create to affordability. So doing some experimentation with deferrals and exemptions to see what kind of an impact those can have, and renter protections on your calendar for 3rd reading tonight as well. Really trying to address not just housing affordability, but also housing stability and access, because we know those are all key to ensuring a home for everyone in our community. So with that, it is precisely 11 o'clock. And yeah, we're happy to stand for any questions. And again, I think just really wanted to center the conversation and around the Boiseans who are going to be impacted and are being impacted by the city's investment in this area. Because all of our residents bring something really vital to the fabric of our community. And this work is about trying to make sure that people who make our community better, which is all of our residents, can continue to be part of our community. So again, happy to stand for questions or be done.
Madam Mayor, if we have time, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation. I think it's very, very helpful for us as council. I have a question on the Denton project. We know that there's been a huge need for emergency rental assistance with COVID, and coming up, we're going to move some of the money from the emergency rental assistance to the Denton project. Maureen, can you talk to us a little bit about that and why we're not using that for emergency rental, and then the purpose of moving it to Denton?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Willetts, I'm happy to do that. So because we were so efficient and effective in administering the emergency rental assistance program, we eclipsed the amount of total funding that we initially received. So I think initially in ERA 1 funds, we received in the neighborhood of $10 to $12 million. And then our initial tranche of ERA 2 was $8 million. So what we did was some analysis around the merits of keeping the program open for another couple of weeks, which is what that would have bought us, versus, for all intents and purposes, investing in 200 or nearly 200 units of housing that we will now be able to keep affordable for a period of at least 50 years. Additionally, the ERA2 funds require that we go even deeper than 60% AMI. So we're achieving an even deeper level of affordability than some of our other fund sources, like the low income tax credit, usually enable.
Madam Mayor, can I have a follow-up?
Yeah.
All right, Maureen, so what I hear you saying is that, the federal funding is expiring and we could put that out for citizens, or we could do something that's more long-lasting and put it into housing versus a one-time federal disbursement. Is that what did I hear you correctly?
Madam Mayor, Council Member Willetts, yes, by and large, that is correct. So part of what we looked into was there was a limit to how much funding each household could receive from the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So part of what we analyzed in bringing this recommendation forward to Mayor and Council to pivot in this direction had to do with the number of households that were no longer eligible for emergency rental assistance. And then there was also a component, and the mayor mentioned this, about our desire to partner with the county and leverage our resources in so doing. So that unlocked another 5 million, hopefully, in county funds that I mentioned we'll be bringing forward in the next couple of weeks for another 200 units of housing. So by making this long-term investment, we're able to really sort of unlock another level of long-term housing affordability, as opposed to a program that was really designed to respond to, this public health emergency that we were trying to contend with.
Thank you.
Councilmember, I appreciate you bring this up and asking that question, because, and Maureen answered it really well. With ERAP 1, we implemented that and we kept people housed. And I think we heard that over 5,000 families, 10,000 families with both ERAP 1 and 2 stayed housed. So as a homelessness prevention tool, a support in hard times. But then when we knew that we would have and receive a second round of funding, we took a deep dive at the impacts it would have on short-term needs and long-term solutions. And because we really wanted to partner with the county in leveraging more money, and we saw that the impact was manageable because we'd met some short-term needs, we could do both short-term needs and long-term solutions with this final set of funds.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. And now we'll move into the final section, an update from Chief Weiniger and Chief Niemeyer on our police and fire departments. Welcome.
Chief Weiniger relied on me to get technology working. I think that's probably.
And I should have learned my lesson to not let you go first in anything.
We love each other. Good morning. I'm going to kick this off and then turn it over to the chief. We're going to do a joint presentation, and really it's a look back at 23 and the investments that the city has made in both of our departments. We'll talk a little bit about staffing, some of the challenges, and quite honestly, how we're overcoming those challenges. We'll also talk a little bit about a look forward into 24 and the investments we will be making and how we're going to continue to meet the service needs of our community. I will say this, and I think Chief Weiniger would agree, there's a lot of great synergy between our two departments, and that's kind of a fun place to be, certainly as a fire chief and a police chief. Outside of the work we do that we're going to talk about in the areas of focus that we have, Our leadership teams meet quarterly, and what we're doing in those leadership team meetings is really talking about the challenges we both face and how do we overcome those challenges and move forward together. So I think you're going to like the presentation. Certainly we'll look forward to questions afterwards. As we look at how we plan and then how we come with requests to all of you to meet the demands of today and then also tomorrow, we really bucket those into 4 areas. And we feel these 4 areas are aligned completely with the city's vision and the strategic priorities. So working in concert with the rest of the city. The first one is response evolution. As we look at how we respond to the community's needs, both today, we rely a lot on data. We analyze that data as far as call volumes, call types. What are the people asking for as far as our services go? Then we ask the question of how do we respond tomorrow? So when we see those trends, and for both of us, I think those trends are very much the same. It's unique challenges, which provides unique opportunities in our unhoused community. We've talked about mental health to you all before in our presentations. Mental health calls are on the rise. VRT just talked about car wrecks. And as our community collectively grows, we have more people coming in and out. Those car wrecks are on the rise as well. So we ask ourselves, how do we respond tomorrow? Maybe differently than we respond today. The mayor was at a station visit and heard all about the fire department responses to assisted living facilities and nursing homes. Does it make sense to always send a fire engine to all those calls, or is there a different way to respond to meet those community needs? We think there is. So when we talk about response evolution, that's what we're talking about. Workforce stabilization, you're going to hear from both of us about our vacancy rates today and some of the challenges we have within that. It is generational retirements for the most part driving that. But stabilizing that workforce to ensure that we're always trying to keep the pipeline full. We'll talk about what we're doing to meet that need. I would also talk about workforce stabilization in the sense for both of us of our employee wellness. We'll talk about that as well, making sure we stay focused on mental health, physical health, and then all around wellness within both of our organizations. And then part of that is training. We both have training requirements put on us by either Post or the State of Idaho EMS Bureau or NFPA. Maintaining those requirements is very important. It's vitally important to both of us. And so that training component is a big part, as well as the equipment and the technology that we use within our 2 departments and how are we looking forward. Technology is a big one. Technology is doing a lot more in our space that we didn't have in our lifetimes. How are we looking forward to make sure that that technology that we're looking at meets the demands of our officers and our firefighters? That'll turn over to Chief.
And if this, good morning, Madam Mayor, members of council, if this slide looks familiar, we have shared this before. And so just as a way to kick off, we want to make sure that we recognize that you have made significant investments in our capital planning and investments in our personnel and our resources, and also in our employee wellness. It's our responsibility to care for those officers and employees that we're recruiting and that we're hiring and training. And the better we take care of them, I believe, the better they can take care of the residents in our community. So we're going to jump off with some police department specific items. And we were asked to provide an update on where we are with staffing issues, as well as some of the investments that have been made. So to start with, just like to talk about the investments that have been committed in our maintenance and operation plans, and then just talk a little bit about some of the officer safety equipment that you have authorized and invested in. We are in the process of purchasing, I don't know if everybody's aware or not, but the bullet resistant vest that I'm wearing today works for a variety of calibers of handguns. But if I were to be shot with a rifle, that rifle round is traveling at such a velocity, it would go right through the bullet resistant vest. I say resistant because they're never bulletproof. So we have authorized and are in the process of purchasing some special plates that are housed in this vest that would protect the vital parts of an officer if he were to be hit by a rifle round traveling at that high velocity. So that's just a quick example. We have some investments in explosive breaching and less lethal program supplies, and we have made some additions to our training division so that we can in fact support the hiring of more officers and personnel. Another thing that we are purchasing that you have authorized is some new speed detection equipment. Not new technology, but we have to keep on top of the life cycles of these things. And so we have some new laser speed detection systems for our motor officers who primarily focus on traffic enforcement. And then the one I'd really like to highlight here is the new annual mental health and wellness check-ins for all sworn and non-sworn BPD employees. Because the mayor's office has shared approximately $80,000 in funding with us to be used in advance a new annual mental health wellness check-in for all sworn and non-sworn employees. Think about our crime lab technicians, our community service specialists that get such an exposure to some of the more horrific things that they see on a regular basis. This prioritizes the mental health and puts an annual mental health screening on equal footing with what we've had a longstanding practice of an annual physical exam for officers and employees. So we feel like that's going to go towards that mental health commitment that we make to wellness. So with that, that adds on to the funding that we received last year, and in the form of a $165,000 grant from the Department of Justice, we secured to help develop a holistic wellness program for BPD. It's well aligned with the work that's already underway in fire, I believe. And so that program covers everything from sleep recovery training to some spousal support, some seminars on financial wellness for our employees to try to address that holistic and wellness approach from all around. And that includes our peer support team members, the chaplaincy program, providing training for them. And we even have a train the trainer program in yoga for first responders and tactical breathing and things that will help improve the performance of the officers as they go out and work with the members of the community. Some of the capital investments I'd just like to highlight between FY21 and FY24. We have 34 new positions that have been authorized and added, and investments in personnel grew by a total of 36% in that time. And that includes not only new positions, but the increase in funding and compensation packages for those folks. At the same time, those 34 positions were added. That exceeds the previous baseline target by 70%, because I don't know if you recall, but in 2020, the city's budget model assumed the addition of 5 new positions in BPD each year, and we've actually grown by more than that. And so the total investments in personnel grew by 36%. Maintenance and operations and capital, that M&O investment grew by 29% from FY20's base budget of $7.7 million to an FY24 budget of $9.9 million, and be happy to answer questions about where that money is going or where it's been spent. But an additional $15.7 million was allocated for equipment, software, and facilities improvements through the capital fund. And this I want to just leave in front of you for a few minutes so that you can digest what that looks like. This is a representation of our hiring, the green line on top in each year, and the turnover rate, meaning the people that we lost, whether that's through resignations, being discharged for other reasons, or for retirements. And so you can see in 2020 that we were upside down. We had 13 hires in 2020 and we lost 19 people. And in 2021 was a big hiring year, but we also lost a lot of folks for a variety of reasons. 2022, we were completely upside down again with only 22 hires and the loss of 26, I believe, people there. So in 2023, the good news is I think we're turning the corner, maybe stemming the tide a little bit. We have a number of folks who are eligible to retire who have chosen not to retire yet at this point. And that's a double-edged sword we have to plan for. But at least we're seeing people, I believe, the morale turning around a little bit. People are sticking around a little bit longer. And we're seeing obviously some progress in the hiring that we are making. So staffing is our top priority in the Boise Police Department. We're focusing on supporting our training division so that we can hire more officers each year. And we do have plans. Obviously, we expect maybe 11 to 15 folks to retire in FY24, but we plan to hire between 30 and 40. So we're constantly chipping away at those vacancies that we have. And within the next year or two, we certainly hope to be fully staffed. As I look around at our partner agencies around the Treasure Valley, many of them are approaching full staffing. And so I look at that as a good thing, that we will not necessarily be as competitive or competing with those agencies for the qualified applicants that are coming our way. So I'm hopeful about recruitment and staffing in the future. Madam Mayor, do you have a question?
Well, and Chief, I just want to say thank you, because one of the priorities we set together, and you've worked to do this, is to right size that this year. And I want to acknowledge too council's agreement to invest in the training program, to invest in incentives for field training officers that make it possible for you to hire more people and put them into training so we can get folks into our neighborhoods to keep us safe. And, it's interesting too, as we think about the number of positions that the department has hired or that the council has created in the last 3 years, as you pointed out on that last slide, and the increase above what had been planned before that. I would imagine that in 20 years or so, the department's going to face this again from a generational retirement perspective, because there's a whole bunch of folks that are aging out, retiring and moving on. So we're hiring a lot of people, all of which are coming in at the same time. So 20 plus years from now, another council will be looking at this and looking at generational retirements and need to hire again.
Madam Mayor, yes, we certainly look at and keep track of potential retirements and the blocks was, as we look forward to the next couple of years, there are even more and more. So those generational retirements do impact us, but that just highlights the need for us to beef up our training, our recruitment, and all of those things. So we are working on that. Thank you. I want to draw quick attention as I come to a close here shortly. Some of the recruitment efforts that we are making, we have focused an effort on the Hispanic Youth Summit on a regular annual basis. We have got currently a team of 25 recruiters, which are sworn officers from all ranks and assignments, officers, detectives, sergeants, and lieutenants in the training division, patrol division, detective division, and our community outreach division. And those recruiters have been to at least 10 recruitment events this past year, to include 3 travel trips to other states. Multiple locations in Washington, Colorado, and Idaho, events at the Boise State University career fairs, Gowan Field career fairs, Northwest Nazarene College career fair, and other recruitment events in the local area as well. So we're really trying to increase our recruitment efforts, and we have started something where we actually give practice to folks who are going through the process. So whether that's practice in a written test or a physical fitness test or an oral board interview, we've set up at least 30 of those sessions where we help people who are interested in becoming police officers know what it takes to get through that process and help them. And so those efforts, I believe, are paying off. And lastly, I would just like to look at the recruitment. We've focused on at least a couple of women in law enforcement workshops in the area. We've increased the number of our field training officers, and as I mentioned, the recruitment team. And we continue with our high hiring standards. We have lots of things underway. I don't know if any of those things sparked a question for anyone, but I'll take a breath and be happy to answer questions as we wrap up. And I'd like to turn the time over to Chief Niemeyer to talk about the fire department initiatives in that realm as well.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. I'll always mention this. I'm always excited to see investments when it comes to mental health and wellness for all of our first responders. So thank you for doing that. And I've gotten personal feedback from a lot of officers about how effective even the sleep training was, recovery training, which is just such an important investment, and you wouldn't necessarily think about it. I do have some questions about some of the women in law enforcement recruitment. I remember a presentation probably a couple of years ago where that was actually the biggest gap when, as far as matching our demographics, within the community. And I'm wondering, with some of those efforts, if we've made any sort of progress, or if we know if we've made any progress in getting more folks actually in there, female.
Madam Mayor, Council President Halliburton, that is a great question, and it is certainly something that across the board, nationwide and worldwide, in fact, law enforcement is not necessarily represented by the demographics of the community that we served, especially in relation to gender. And so we're probably a little bit ahead of the curve in that regard with a lot of other places, but we have so far to go if we're really trying to match the demographics. So we take pride in having a higher percentage of females than many other departments around us and in other places, but we definitely need to focus those efforts. We have seen some modest success, I would say, but oftentimes the academies that we are running and the numbers that we see are still posing a challenge for sure.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, a follow up there, and I don't expect you to have an answer. If that's an area where the council can be more supportive, please let me know. I think that that's certainly something that I would love to see, and hopefully those outcomes. I know that there's effort, but like if there's things that we can do to really support those outcomes, please let me know.
Madam Mayor, Council President Halliburton, thank you. I think some of the compensation packages and just some of the ideas that women can indeed thrive in a career in law enforcement is not something that necessarily folks have thought about in the past as much. And so we're really trying to push the awareness and the understanding that yes, we need them and they can serve a vital role and be officers in the department and bring some specific talent, skills, and abilities. So anything we can do to spread that word is always helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. As we get to the fire department, you recognize these buckets: the response evolution, capital planning, workforce stabilization, employee wellness. I just want to hit some highlights from 2023 that we're very proud of. You got a briefing not too long ago from Chief Ray and I about the squad pilot. That is a way to think innovatively about how do we respond in our downtown core. That the core continues to be our highest demand, even though calls for service around the entire city are growing and will continue to grow. But we know that that downtown core is where the demand is for the majority of our call volume. And we do have Station 5 downtown, Station 1. We've talked about Station 1, that has a lot of specialty to it, and they're out a lot on some of those specialty responses. And then our downtown Station 5 with Engine 5 and Ladder 5, they are continuing to increasingly be busy. And we believe we can respond differently to help offset that burden a little bit. You all knew about Float to Boise too, and I'm very proud of this. This was a great collaboration. This was innovation at its best. Joanna Zeibel, our data insight analyst, really helped put together that app. And then our dive team really embraced this. And we've done some station visits at Station 1 with the dive team, and they really appreciated that. They were able to provide real-time input into the dangers on the river that ultimately our citizens were then able to learn. So it was a great project. It was a great collaboration with Ada County. We do have an after action coming up the middle of October, just to see what we can do better next year as we continue to evolve this program. On the capital planning side, Station 5 is the big one. That was a complete tear down, a rebuild. I will make a note on this because something really cool happened last week. Within Station 5, one of the things that we're proud of, and it's going to have a great community benefit, is a visual museum of our fire department's history that our community members will be able to stop by and see. We just got donated to us from the great grandchildren of an old Boise fire volunteer from the 1800s, a helmet, badges, ribbon commendations from the late 1800s or early 1900s. It's about the earliest artifact that we have in our Boise fire history, and that will now be displayed in that museum for the community to see. So we're really excited about that. Another big capital project was the SCBA replayment. SCBA stands for self-contained breathing apparatus. I know we're the Department of Acronyms. These are the air tanks and the masks that our firefighters wear when they enter a building. We applied for a FEMA grant, a regional grant. So we had other departments involved in that grant process, and we were awarded that. It was about $1.6 million total investment. I think about 1.1 was covered by the grant. So a great opportunity for us to offset some costs there. On the workforce stabilization, we did add an EMS training captain. I mentioned earlier, EMS is that continuing education is demanded and required by the state of Idaho to maintain our paramedic licenses and our EMT licenses. And so that EMS training captain has really helped offset that demand and that training demand for our firefighters. And then our public education program manager, we're very excited to have Maura Hay on board. She's been doing great work in collaboration with parks and other city departments about an AED program, talking about AEDs in the parks potentially. That's exactly what we wanted to see out of this hiring, and she's doing great work there. And then Chief Weininger mentioned our wellness program. This is something that had just started prior to my arrival. Chief Bullen is here with us today. Kelsey Carnoso, who you know is involved in this, as well as a number of staff, looking at how do we look at lifetime wellness. We have a saying in fire that we want to take care of you from hire to retire and beyond. And that's something we talk about early in the recruit academies and the things that we offer to make sure that our employees stay on a pathway of wellness. Talk a little bit more about the specifics on what we're doing here in the next slide. I do want to mention on the fire service contracts, as you know, we have contracts with the Whitney Fire Protection District, as well as the North Ada County Fire and Rescue Protection District. Those fire service contracts account for about $11 million of our budget. And then grants, we do pursue grants, and it's been a great add to our budget. TAG is through the Ada County City Emergency Management Group. OEM is the Office of Emergency Management for the state of Idaho. Director Brad Ritchie. That training and equipment grant that we get from OEM is typically given directly to hazmat for some of the hazmat training and equipment. The SCBA grant I mentioned, the WUI Fuels Mitigation Grant is through a FEMA grant as well. And then I just want to add to it that's not on the slide that you all heard about. We're excited to continue our partnership with the National Park Service. This is proving to be a really good, cool partnership for both of us. And so we're looking forward to that ongoing partnership. So I need to advance my slide as well, get lost. On the vacancies, I will say we had one day of being whole. I was so excited. We had a recruit academy in January with, I believe, 18 recruits, 19 recruits. We got done and we were whole for one day, and I was all excited. And then Chief Bolin came to me and said, well, we're not whole anymore. And this really is the same as we're seeing in the police department, a lot of generational retirements. I'm typically attending 1 to 2 retirement parties a month for our firefighters that are retiring. We anticipate that to continue like the police department. We have a projection every year of who's eligible to retire. And the reason that that's important is if we go down to the FY24 investments, we have traditionally just put on 1 recruit academy per year. We know that's not maintaining what we need. We are now going to be doing 2 recruit academies a year. So for FY24, you're going to see a recruit academy in January and another one in August. August is specifically designed and has been built hopefully to start that Station 13 personnel process. We know Station 13 will be opening up in the winter roughly of 25. We need to get those folks through an academy beforehand, get them out on the street through their field training officer time in time to open up Station 13. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on this, but part of that is also then looking at how are we recruiting? Quite honestly, the fire department has always been able to rely on, put it out on social media. We'll have 12 to 1,500 people apply and life is good. That has been trending downward over the last probably 5 to 10 years. And in the fire service, as we engage with our colleagues, this is a big challenge in the fire departments across the nation. We know we have to recruit differently. And so following the lead of what the police department has been doing, we're investing time, people, and effort and money into job fairs, local events. I want to mention our Ignite Boot Camp that has been hugely successful for us. Year 1 was really focused on adult women. Year 2, we focused on adult women, had another class for young women and young boys. So we're bringing as many people through our doors as we can at an early age to show them what we do. And that may pay off 10 years from now after we're retired, but it will pay off. And we're happy with that investment. We're also going to look to engage at a higher level with our high schools and our college partnerships. We've met with the Boise School District. We've met with CWI, who has a fire service program. It's been very successful. It's been in effect now for about 5 years. We're looking to provide better partnership with both of those programs. We talked about lifetime wellness, and I think this is something to focus on because it's something we're proud of. As much as we look to the future and the needs that we may have to respond to our community, and we're asking those folks to respond at the highest level possible of professionalism, efficiency, and effectiveness. We know to do that, we have to take care of our employees. That's very important to us. So if we look at FY23, the 5 buckets across the top are the 5 buckets of our lifetime wellness program: mental, social, physical, cultural, and occupational. In 23, on the mental bucket, we focused on resiliency. We know that's important to first responders to navigate through a career. And we also focused on PTSI training. I want to thank again Chief Bull and the entire team of peer support that put together that training. We also talked a lot about suicide prevention. Unfortunately, that is something we have to talk about. So we're hitting that head on. On the social side, we engaged our retirees. We know when firefighters retire, many of them struggle. They just do. They lose that connection to family for a career that they spend many years doing. So we have brought in some retiree support and engagement. We have quarterly meetings with retirees. They're invited to all of our events. It's really cool to see them show up at other retirements when they show up. It's really nice to see them. On the physical side, I would say a great thing for our fire department, we have one individual that is focused on injured workers, and that's our injured worker advocate. We work directly with Corey Pence as well and his team. But that one individual, we just did an employee survey, and the satisfaction level throughout everything we do, this was the highest satisfaction level we had in our fire department, knowing that the firefighters know they have one person who is tracking their progress, making sure appointments are on time, and making sure they're getting through the process in a timely manner. So very excited about that. The equipment replacement plan we mentioned. On the cultural side, we did participate in the WASPMouth training. We really appreciated that. It was great training. And then in the occupational side, focused on incumbent training after action reviews. So after action reviews, if you ever see firefighters gathered at the back of an engine after a fire, it's called a tailboard session. We do it all the time. Police usually makes fun of us when we do it, but we get together and we just do an immediate what went well and what can we improve upon. It's usually about 10 minutes, but it's very valuable. The challenge in that is when we do a tailboard after a fire, it's just those crews that got to hear what went well and what didn't. Developing formalized after action reviews, taking all those lessons learned, good and bad, and spreading that information across the entire department on all 3 shifts and through every division. We're excited about that. Our FY24 investment, station learning technology, the bulk of that is being paid for by the county 911 funds. So imagine this for a second. It's 2 a.m, you're in bed, your smoke alarms and your iPhone alarm goes off at the same time at about a 7 level volume. And at the same time that's happening, your lights go off. Imagine your heart rate and what it's going to do there. That's typically what a fire station alerting system consists of. This new technology alerting system, now imagine that same scenario I just gave you where the lights slowly come on and that volume goes from about a 2 then to a 7. And we know through science that has a great effect on cardiovascular issues. So we're looking forward to this technology being implemented in 24. Valley-wide wellness conference, a lot of fire departments in the Valley are doing some really cool things. It's bringing all of us together to learn from each other and look at how we're moving the needle forward for our firefighters. On the social side, one of the areas that we think we need to do better is providing some spousal and family support. You know, our firefighters are gone for 48 hours at a time. Yes, they're off for 4 days, but I can tell from personal experience, day 1 is recovery from the previous 48 hours. The day before you go to work, your mind's usually spinning about what's the next 48 hours going to look like. So you kind of have that 2-day break. In addition to that, when our vacancies occur, we have to rely on firefighters coming back to work outside of their normal schedule. Right? We know that takes a toll on families. We all miss Christmases, birthdays, anniversaries, all that stuff. Making sure we have good spousal and family support, we believe is important, not only for us, but for our firefighters. So when they do come to work, they're coming to work the best they can. On the physical side, we're incorporating new fitness technology as well as new entry-level fitness standards. We're excited about that. I talked about the recruitment strategy to meet our demands and our needs moving forward. And then on the occupational side, I talked about training. Training is the stuff that's required for us just to maintain our licenses, certifications, et cetera. But in that last survey I just mentioned, one of the areas that our firefighters said we need more of, and that is professional development, not just training, but true professional development, and then succession planning. I've always believed the strength of an organization is your ability to rise people up within the organization to take your place. I've always believed that's a strong sign of a good organization. So these are 2 areas of focus in FY24 that we'll be focused on. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Madam Mayor, I've got one question. If we don't have time to go over it, we can always come back. On one of the slides, you just had mentioned the 4-person staffing and recruitment. I think that's something that the mayor's office brought forward during our budget sessions this last year. Council certainly approved, and I think we're excited about it. Are we ready to hit the ground running there? What's our status on the 4-person staffing?
We are. We're ready. And part of that 2 academies a year is going to be able to meet the need of our retirees, but also need to meet the need of the growth that we have coming up. So we're ready.
Do we have a start date? Like, is there like a push the button, we're going to do this date?
Great question. I just got asked that at a station visit yesterday. So we'll have our next academy in January. That is the best time for us to have our first academy. It'll take about 14 weeks to get our firefighters through that academy. As soon as they hit the line, and they're called counters, is what we call them. Once they're done with their field training officer time, when they get on the line, they get acclimated to shift work. We'll be ready to pull the trigger on the 4-person staffing. We'll do some movement of people, get the 4-person staffing out there. So I'd anticipate spring is when we'll have the 4-person staffing at station 15. That'll be the first station.
Well, thank you very much. Good to see you both. Thanks for the update. You've accomplished a ton the last year and looking forward to what's next.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, you can sit however you would like.
Would it be easier for staff if we just continued like this? Yeah, why don't we just do that? It looks like a relatively quick meeting. We'll be back here at noon, just like this.